Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kuntarkis. My name is Michael Yon, and this episode is From Conditioning to Consciousness. So, here's my first question to Kuntarkis. What are the strongest habits shaping humanity right now?
Well, I could answer that in two ways. I could answer the negative aspect, and I could answer maybe some positive aspects. The habits of life in many forms are mostly negative. But when we begin to change our level of thinking, we begin to change our habits. Our habits are passed on. I know we've said this, and I've said this many, many times, but it's the truth. Our habits through our parents, their characteristics, their experiences are passed genetically through the blood, the sperm, to the child. Now they come out as habits when the child experiences something, whether it experiences it from the parents or its own experience, but it does bring those habits out. It also brings out the cultures. Cultures are passed on through genetics. And that is the really funny part. Same with society. Now, the interesting thing about society, we, through the wheel of life, reincarnate very similar to what we did in our previous incarnation. And we seem to stay in that family line, just like all the elite criminals. They do. And I believe somewhere along the line, consciously, they have incorporated that as a law. So when they incarnate, they are already, I would just say, embedded, ingrained with their parents' genetics, be it negative or positive. Coming to the elite criminals, it would be definitely negative. Society, well, we go out to movies, to shops, buy clothes, we meet people, we communicate, we go swimming in the oceans, in pools, whatever we're doing, playing table tennis, playing golf, whatever. And we pick up certain habits and we formulate those habits into our existence, into our society. And that's what creates us. And that's the interesting factor.
And why do cultures differ so much while sharing the same core struggles?
Well, if you go back through time, cultures were always different throughout different countries, different societies. Everyone long ago didn't travel. They just sort of stayed in one place and they created certain forms of cultures into their society. And it was handed down throughout each incarnation of life. And it became ingrained within us. So the cultures of life are created by the parents, passed down through the generations and generations and generations. And then in this society today, being 2026, everybody travels worldwide and they learn about those cultures and they bring it back into their own country and they even incorporate it into that society, that way of thinking. Then we allow certain cultures to come into this country and we adapt and they adapt to ours and we adapt to them. So it's quite amazing how it all occurs.
What habits are preventing humanity from maturing collectively?
It's called human ego. I was actually writing about that today and I was quite amazed to what I answered on this question so long. This question by being so long, and then my answer was so long. But if we honestly look, say, at the whole situation about habits, preventing humanity from maturing collectively? Well, if we actually look at it, our habits are created from human ego, and it gets instilled within us, and we grow up with it. Certain habits can be negative and positive, but because of the emotions of human ego, a lot of it is negative. And we allow those habits to live within us and within our societies. That prevents us from maturing collectively. But the other side of it, humanity lives a certain way. And there are those like the elite criminals that have hijacked humanity and have created negative habits for all of humanity in so many different ways. I'll just name a few and see what you think. The first one is the types of food we eat. The foods today are inundated with chemical structures, and they're all negative. Anything that has chemicals within it that we consume affects our entire internal body in some form or some fashion. The other thing is alcohol. Totally changes the interior of our body, the way we think, totally holding us down at a certain level of consciousness so we don't advance. Now, you've got to ask yourself, why do they allow alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, drugs of all different descriptions to be placed within our human bodies? Negative foods, negative waters, changing everything about us. The foods that most people eat are not good when it comes to nutrition. I was writing about that today, about this person asking a question. How do I grow beyond who I am and grow consciously? And I explained it very briefly, but I said you need to eat more vegetables. You need to eat more fruit. You need to give up all that junk food that you've been consuming for 41 years. It's a condition. That's all it is, a condition. And the way we live today is preventing us as humanity to grow beyond our way of thinking. And that's what we need to change, our way of thinking.
Mm. And how does culture shape spiritual awareness?
That's a very interesting question, Michael, but I'm going to answer it in a negative way, unfortunately. Then I'll try to create it into something positive. But when you say, how does culture shape spiritual awareness? Culture, in most cases, are nothing but conditioning. If we really study culture, we will start to discover that most of culture is based on one's level of thinking, also one's level of religion. Religion on this planet is all created by man. Yes, if we went back thousands and thousands of years ago, there could have been extraterrestrials that created certain ways of thinking for humanity through domination and control, and they've passed that same form of information in a culture form onto humanity, and humanity, through the years, have formulated it in a different way for domination. And most religions today are based on domination and control of your way of thinking. You have to believe in this. You have to believe in that. And it becomes your reality. And you live a whole life believing something that is a complete 100% illusion. And that is the biggest problem. There is no spiritual awareness through culture. Spiritual awareness is within your very genetics, within your living energy of 4 quadrillion cells that go back to the dawn of time. And with that type of intelligence, we need to open up our living energy of consciousness within ourselves so we can bring the past to the present and formulate it simply as a memory. So we learn that we are spiritual beings and we are spiritually aware, but we've been hijacked to think at a certain level. And that's where the negative is. The positive is an individual saying to themselves, I am a spiritual being. I am self-aware. I can do this and I can do that through my own thoughts, my own training. I can levitate my consciousness to higher realms of communication. That's how we grow through spiritual awareness.
Very good. And what qualities would help humanity survive its current phase of development?
The quality would be, mate, is to let go of the level of thinking, to stop the consumption of being a murderer. Now, this is an interesting part. You know, most people would just laugh at me by saying this, but they don't understand because they're not willing to, because if they did, they would suddenly realize that they are a murderer. Every single person that puts a piece of meat into their mouth from an animal is a murderer because they're all part of the same system. It's like the old story about the sergeant giving the order, the lieutenant giving the order to the sergeant, and the sergeant giving the order to the soldiers to shoot the prisoner. And the prisoner being there because he created the situation by murdering those innocent people. So he's going to be shot. Who's actually responsible? Most people would say the person who shot those other people. But it's not. They're all responsible because they're all putting in the thought and the actions. And it's the same with, say, when you consume animal flesh. You say, well, I didn't kill the animal. I bought this from the butcher. I bought it from Woolworths or Coles. Right? The people who kill them in the slaughterhouses. But it follows on. It's the same energy source. You've been highly conditioned to consume that. So it makes you just as equal in being a murderer as the person who actually killed the animal to begin with. So it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And it's unhealthy anyway.
Completely unhealthy, mate. That's why humanity is not growing consciously.
Mm.
But there is one thing, I got to say this. When we say what qualities would help humanity, there's two words. Well, actually, there's three. Self, unconditional love. Finding the love of heart within yourself. That would be a quality that would advance any human individual in their own development as a spiritual being.
Wow, I like that. Yeah, I like that. Are humans fundamentally cooperative, destructive, or unfinished?
Well, I have to say two things. I'll go right to the end first. They are definitely unfinished, and they need to rejuvenate their level of understanding and their level of thinking. And the only way to do that is to change your thinking and your food. It's like this. If you think right, then you're right. If you think wrong, then you're wrong. So the choice is always the individual, how you see things, what type of action, negative or positive, you put into it. So really, we're unfinished. The other side of the fundamental cooperative side is the destructive side. We are on a road of complete destruction because we as humans are allowing the elite criminals, the terrorists of this earth, the murderers, the rapists, all to bring us down so we don't grow consciously. They are holding us back on purpose. That's why they've stuffed up and encased the pineal gland in probably 97% of humanity. And that's a very large proportion. And that's why people don't think beyond what they are. I'll give you a little example that happened to me today. I finished at Woolworths and I came up to the checkout and I noticed there was only two checkouts open. And I went to the one on the left, which is number 2. And just as I got the trolley behind this lady was on my right. She was going up and then she turned around and she tried to squeeze in between me and the lady. You could see it. And I just looked at her. I just smiled. And she thought that I was going to let her in because she's older. But I didn't, because I had a place to be. And it's my right. Doesn't matter whether I'm a male or a female. It's my right. If I'm in front, is to go in front. But suddenly I realized why. Because if I let that lady in, that lady would have been asked from number 1 checkout, because this lady come walking up, and she would have said, would you like to come over here? Because that's what she did to me. And I said, oh, thank you so much. Very kind of you. And I went over there, and she naturally followed me, the lady behind. And I'm putting my stuff on, and I could feel the negativity coming off her. And that's her level of understanding. That's her level of thinking, because that's all she knows. All negative. Very sad. But as the lady who was serving me, she said, how are you this morning? I said, very good, thank you. And yourself? She said, oh, I'm okay. She said, my level of thinking, she said, is really difficult because I can't make these decisions. And I said, oh. I said, did you know that everything that you are comes from your thoughts? And she looked at me for a moment. She said, are you a philosopher? I said, no, I'm just me. She said, oh. I said, it's like the old saying, what you think, you become. What you eat, you become. Negative or positive. And she looked at me with that look and she gave me a smile and she said, you know, that is the best information that I have ever received over so many years from anyone. You've just explained something to me that I've been searching for years. Then I picked up the lady behind me on my side was really shaking her head around saying, hurry up, and sending negative energies. And I said, well, there are a lot of very ignorant people in this world, I said today, and they're very negative because that's the way they grew up, which is really sad. And that's what they need to change, their level of thinking. And she said, you're right. She said, thank you so much. She said, you have a really, really beautiful day. She actually said that to me. I said, you too. Thank you for your service. And I took the trolley and walked out. So there are people, Michael, that are trying, but they're not getting the information that will help them on their road to being spiritually aware.
Totally. It's so easy to be distracted from it.
Absolutely.
I think you kind of covered this before, but I'll ask it again in case you want to say something different. How do collective habits become inherited across generations?
There is just one very strong answer to that. The collectiveness of habits always come from our parents, but also they're within our cellular structure because all of us on this planet have had either 1 life, 5 lives, 20 lives, 50 lives, 100, 400, 1,000, 6,000 over the last 928,000 years of human evolution. So all those habits can be activated from the habits of our parents. And that's amazing. Most people would never, ever think of that. Their genetics, I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Their genetics, for instance, the mother's blood flows through the baby for 9 months. And all that cellular structure within that bloodline, under microscopic, is full of habits, full of characteristics, full of experiences by that mother. The father's sperm, same thing. Just a small amount of sperm, yet it has all his habits, his characteristics, everything, even his anger, even the mother's anger, even the funny ways in life, your expressions through your habits. That's why the child grows, gets to about 9, 10, and is looking for its own individuality and is finding it very hard because there is something preventing that individual from discovering that they are an individual. So they become angry or they become funny in their characteristics. It's a clash of habits, negative or positive. And that's the interesting part.
As they attempt unconsciously to evolve into whoever they are on a higher and higher level.
Exactly. And you know the funny part? You'll never get rid of the characteristics or the habits. What you have to learn is the balance of life. You inherit that from generation to generation to generation. And that's why we live a life, every single incarnation, very, very similar because of those habits from our parents and from our own cellular memory. And what we need to change is the way we think, and that will change our habits.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, perfect.
The opposite. What's the opposite of garbage in? Good in, good out. Good thinking.
Yeah, good in, good out. Yep.
Yeah. So, what would a healthier human civilization prioritize first?
If say humanity was very healthy, they would have to ask themselves, what are they healthy in? Are they healthy in body? Are they healthy within their logical brain? Are they healthy within their mind or their imagination? Or do they have that self-awareness that they have a soul? And that soul created them as a facet that went into a human body that we chose from the wheel of life. I think that's one thing that humanity would have to look at very, very deeply. The other thing is, if you wanted to be healthy, the first thing you'd have to do is change your thinking. So did they do that? And you've got to change your thinking into something more positive. You've got to expand your visions in how you see life, not from your conditioning. That is one of the biggest issues on this planet. All our habits are conditional. Our thinking is conditional. Our fears are conditional. And that's something we have to look at. And that's something we have to learn to let go. So it becomes, within our cellular memory, totally unbiased, neither negative or positive. It just is. And even if we go through life to say 50 or 40, and suddenly that comes up from the old conditioning, we don't react to it because we've gone beyond that level of consciousness.
Yeah, wow. I just got lost in my thoughts about how our conditioning, it's all in the past, and how we they've noted that our brains don't really like a change to our identity, as in how we see ourselves in our life and our habits and all the rest. Even though we might want to change on one level, we're kind of ingrained, aren't we?
We're totally ingrained. One of the things we really, really have to learn to do when we learn to let go is learn to love ourselves unconditionally so we can accept others into our lives and love also unconditionally. When we don't love and we don't understand the meaning of love, we follow the old patterns of life and bring the wrong person from a previous life or from our parents. Now, just recently, I won't go into names because I don't want to judge that person, but this is the reality of human existence. Because of our emotions that we never deal with from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, and because of our parents' emotions, we have a hard battle. And what we do, we might say have a parent that might be a really nasty type person, always being angry, always being deceitful, being a liar, or the female, the mother or the father, or both. But when we have a parent like that, we have a tendency when we become older and we go out and we find a boyfriend or a girlfriend, depending on what sex we are, we have a tendency through our fears of that conditioning to bring the same type of person into our life, even the same month of the birthday into our life. And about 2 or 3 or 4 years down the track of being with that person, suddenly we're looking at it and saying, oh my God, I've just got the same person in my life as my father or my mother. And that happens worldwide, hundreds of times per day. And this is what we're missing. We're bringing the same reality that we grew up with back into our life to try and deal with the emotions of our parents as well as ourselves. And that's the reality.
Yeah, it's always, you're kind of, with all that you're attracting, it's all for your own growth anyway. So it's all in the right place in the right time to stop and think, no, okay, I see what is happening in my life. Now I choose to rise above it, to change, to be different, to think different, to find and love myself to the point that things around me will change.
Absolutely. But we have to also really fully understand that if we don't have the ability to raise our own consciousness, so we change our thinking, we continue the same line of pattern that our parents and their parents and their parents have done, just different circumstances, because we're not self-aware in doing it. And that's where our thinking has to change. And one of the greatest gifts beyond imagination is self-love. Learning to love who we are and accept ourselves and forgive ourselves and forgive others. That opens up new doorways to higher forms of communication. 100%.
And to do that, you think of it, you feel it, you be that change within. You
Yeah.
say, I love myself, I forgive myself, I'm
Yes.
grateful for all. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to say it from the heart.
Mm.
It's like when like sometimes Misha even says to me, she says, oh, you say that so beautifully. And she starts crying. And sometimes I look at her and I have this big smile and I just say, I have to say this. You know, my heart is so blissfully lucky to have you in my life. And sometimes my heart just cries and cries and cries. But what it's crying in is joy to have you because I love you so much.
Mm.
When you talk like that to a person in any way, you open up doors of pure love. You really do. You feel it. You know it. You can even smell it. And that's what unconditional love is all about.
Wow. And you've said before to speak to yourself in front of a mirror and say these good words, it'll be more powerful.
Yes.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I've got one more question for you, and I wonder how positive your answer is going to be.
Okay.
What gives you hope for humanity despite its patterns?
Okay. I would never use the word hope because I know hope leads to hopelessness and that becomes a negative. If I was going to say, I'm just looking at it now, if I was going to say a word, I would say, what gives one the inner trust for humanity despite its patterns? Because I know trust is something that is 100% positive. I trust in myself. I trust in you. I trust my life will be like this because that's how I see it. But when you say, I hope my life will be like that, if you really look at it, what you'll find, it's leading you to hopelessness because the whole process of that word is negative. I was explaining something to my son this morning. He was asking about flushies, and you probably don't know what this is, but I didn't either. Flushies are toys that you go to these machines in these shopping centres. You put $2 in, you press the button, and the arm goes over, comes down, and grabs it. If you're lucky, you get it, and you bring it over, and you drop it into a big hole, and you bring it out, and you got it. I was trying to explain to him that you're not focusing on the right thing, my son. He goes, what do you mean, Daddy? I said, well, when Daddy goes with you to these machines, I look at it and I study the arm and I connect with it. And if you study it by focusing on that arm, what you'll see is the reality of the scam, because that's what it is, a complete scam. The computer system that's set up within its structure allows it to pick up every so often a toy, maybe 3 times a day, maybe 4, maybe 5. Depends on how many times it's used. But most times, if you study the arm and you got it up top of the toy and you bring it down and you grab it, and as soon as it lifts up, just as it's lifting, it opens up and lets go. It really does. I see it every single time, but not many people see it, especially JC. I suppose kids are all like that. And I'm trying to get him to understand that the little computer system that's in there is set up to allow the arm to grab so many times per day and take a toy out. But probably 80% of the time, as soon as you go to pick that up and as soon as you try to raise it, it opens automatically, really wide. Normally, when you pick something up and it drops out, the claw stays in the same position, but it doesn't. It opens up. And that's telling you it's a scam. And that's life. If we listen to certain people that are not of the heart, those people are full of fear in themselves. And that person you probably could never, ever trust, especially if they don't come from the heart and they believe in the word hope. But when you get a person that believes in themselves and they know within their own essence that they love who they are, that's love, unconditional love.
Right, I don't know what to say. That's good. That's love and that's trust. And trust can be, I guess, seeing the better in all. If you're trusting, you can see and believe in the positive of many things that you see, and that has an effect on your inner life, but your outer world as well, which is good for the entire humanity.
It is. Yeah. What we need to understand, all of this that we've done just now, all of it comes back to the self. It's like love. You have conditional love, you have unconditional love. Conditional love are the habits of your life through your parents' genetics and their parents' genetics. That's why so many countries suffer so many different ailments and diseases. They literally pass on to their children their ailments, and it comes out in their life later on, depending on their emotions. The doctors in all the fields of being a doctor, I don't believe they understand that. And I also believe they're taught by whatever organization teaches them, only what that organization teaches. And they're not allowed to go outside of that. That's why a lot of doctors during COVID-19 were scared because of the rules that were placed upon them. And if anybody rebelled, they were sacked. And that's 100% true. It happened all over the world.
Mm.
Yeah. Remember this. I know you've heard me say this over the last maybe few months, but this is a very short affirmation. And I'm going to say this. It's more powerful than money, especially when it comes to your spiritual growth and your spiritual awareness and unconditional love, in knowing what you are and who you are and where you may be going. When you can say something like this every single day with heart and really mean it and put the power of yourself into it by saying this: I know that I am pure living energy formulated into pure living consciousness in every moment of every breath, internally, externally. I am ageless, I am timeless, and I am endless. I am a facet, a spirit of my own soul that is my divinity. I am that I am divinity. If you can say something like that, and say that several times a day with heartfelt meaning, you will find that will open up doors within you, and it will pass on knowledge. You will activate the living energy within your 4 quadrillion cellular structure, because within each of those cells is ultimate knowledge. But we have to learn how to open that up.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kuntarkis. That's absolutely fantastic.
You're very welcome. I tell you something now, and I don't want you to think I'm being egotistical, please. I'm saying this because I live in reality. I believe in truth only. I believe in the heart. And I believe in unconditional love. I believe in friendship. I believe in harmony and peace. The greatest gift we have is imagination. And if we can learn to understand and formulate the meaning of imagination through manifestation, through our thought consciousness, we can open ourselves up. In fact, we can open up our own divinity and have a direct link to our own soul. And that's very important. But we have to understand, we have to resolve all our old conditioning, including the conditioning that's been passed on to us by our parents. And it's not that hard. Affirmations can actually do it if we're willing to.
Affirmations can do a lot, can't they? Yeah.
Yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. Oh, the other thing I want to say very quickly, it's about the book of knowledge, I Am Alien, volume 1 and 2. When those books get onto the market, I have to say, if you want to open up your spirituality, your spiritual awareness, your self-understanding of anything. Sensible knowledge of the heart will help you do that. And the way I've formulated Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the Book of Knowledge I Am Alien is to help every human individual grow beyond what they are at this present moment and elevate their own consciousness so they can step beyond who they are and become what they want to be.
Brilliant. Yeah, I can't wait for that to come out in its new form.
Yeah, me too.
This concludes another episode of Kuntarkis. If you'd like to find out more about Kuntarkis, find his website, which is etcconsciousness.com. He has articles there, he has his books listed there, and also if you have any reason to contact us in general for any reason, just email kuntarkis@gmail.com. That's it for now. Thanks so much for listening. My name is Michael Yon, and stay tuned for more.